Hey everyone. All right, so they just fed you guys cookies, so you're all tired. That's great. We're gonna wake you up. We're gonna put the chairs in a circle, do some musical chairs. Everyone up for it? No, I'm kidding. I think. The first thing I want to say is that everyone here most likely is bought into the idea of PLG, wants to do it. How many of you are in a stage where you have not rolled out this PLG yet within your company, or are even looking to get alignment on it and buy in right now? Right? If so, this is definitely going to help, right? So we're going to get alignment today. That's our job. So going forward, who am I? My name is Isaac Nassini. I am the chief prankster and jokester at Nylas. I used to be on the engineering side, right? So I'm familiar with the what's getting built and the why, but I also know a bit about the how, and I think that gives me a lot of context, especially because our company, we sell to developers. I was previously the chief product officer at a company called Science. And at Science, we actually ended up being customers of Nylas, which is fantastic. It's a great way to meet your employer. I highly recommend it. So you may know us, us product people, right? You have your claws out, all that, like it's been said. You may know us by our popular catchphrase, no. It's a very common answer to hear back from product. We also have other ones, such as, we don't have the bandwidth for this right now, which just in case you don't know, it also means no generally. We have our third one, which is we're going to put it in the backlog. That's a no, by the way. And then the very common one that you'll hear these days from the product team is we should switch to PLG. So if you guys are working cross-departmentally, you already have one ally within the company that probably wants to move the same direction, and it's the product team. And I'm biased heavily, but I believe you should work with them quite a bit to make this happen. So the challenge, right? Moved to Nylas. I had experienced the magic of Nylas as a buyer. And just taking a step back, what is Nylas? Nylas builds tools for developers. It's a platform that helps developers build applications that can tap into their users' calendars and their mailboxes and create events on their behalf and read their emails and send emails as them to be able to build these rich communications, these rich experiences with their applications. So it makes their applications more than just like a web app that you log into, but really reaches across these universal business channels of email and calendar. And it's really hard to build these things yourself, right? Very hard. If you've investigated how to build these things yourself, you've stumbled across Nylas at some point and you probably know about it because you realized that this was going to take you like 3 years to build yourself, right? So Nylas is kind of this quiet market behemoth. Most people in this room have most likely had an experience with Nylas' product, right? As we embed into our customers' products, right? So if you've used a CRM, it's better than a coin flip that you have logged into Nylas at some point through that company. But if you haven't tried to solve this problem, you probably don't know what Nylas is. And this was a position where I knew that Nylas could be this default tool in the developer's tool belt to be able to build these calendar email things. And developers always have tool belts. They always have things that they don't really understand, things that they don't make, that they didn't make, that they use all the time. If I pull up a random developer and I say, hey, I want you to be able to take payments in our application, he's not actually going to build a payment gateway. He's going to pull out the old Stripe tool, right? And this developer's got all these tools, right? They can do text messages, they can access bank accounts, all these crazy things. Again, they didn't build these things. They may not even know how they work. Nylas really should be the default tool for email and calendar in the developer's tool belt, considering we don't really have any competitors in that regard. And Nylas had a really tough buying journey. Really hard, right? Going through it, it was, sorry, I'm not supposed to do this. It was kind of pulling teeth to be able to buy the product. And coming in, I really felt like the sales-led motion was forcing us to make a decision before we were able to really do technical validation, right? If you're going to put a lot of engineering resources into something, you got to really understand how it's going to affect your company, how long it's going to take to use, all of that. So the challenge was really there and pretty apparent. Everyone kind of knew it. So going forward, this was the hedge maze that I was speaking about. This was the buying journey. Each of these nodes is something that the implementing developers, the product managers that were using Nylas, something they needed to visit and access or do in order to be able to just build a proof of concept using Nylas, right? And by the way, you're not hearing the PLG terms yet, right? This is all about value, right? It is hard to extract value out of a flow like this, and so you can't charge them money, right? You can't build that self-service flow because they got to talk to someone to get through this. They're going to get lost somewhere in the hedge maze. So all that being said, This was a wonderful quote that someone said to me when I started talking about PLG, and this person will go unnamed for their own benefit. And any sentence that starts with this way, it's not going to be good. The second half is not going to be fun. And so it was, Isaac, you're great, but I don't think you'll ever get Nylas to PLG. And naturally, upon hearing that, it became my mission in life to do this, because nothing better than proving someone wrong, right? So we got a lot of pushback and objections on this side. We actually had a lot of people from Auth0 and really top tier PLG companies that had experienced the magic, but they didn't see a direct path towards getting it. And so the pushback was pretty severe in some cases. My favorite one was, we tried this before. What? Right? So I dug into it, and it was like putting a credit card form, right? It was like, you land on the dashboard, it's like time to pay. Again, this comes back to value extraction, right? It doesn't really, you can have all these flows in the world, all these things, the conversion rate, it doesn't matter. What really matters is, are your users extracting value out of your product before you ask them to pay you? That's what it really comes down to. And we had to do that first. So no, we had not tried it before, but people were overloading the terminology. A lot of concerns around revenue recognition, right? Hey, if we get someone to sign a contract now, we get 12 months of revenue recognized. I think those are actually pretty valid concerns to address, right? It's not something you should necessarily try and talk someone out of. They're good concerns to have. And then misunderstandings about PLG. And in general, everyone's got their own thing that they think it means, because, you know, they're not invested enough to attend conferences and whatnot. Maybe they watched a YouTube video or something, or maybe they read one little article, or maybe they're just guessing based off the context they've heard the word PLG. And generally, I found that just not saying PLG is pretty good here, right? We actually came up with our own terminology inside because people were scared of the PLG word. We came up with ACE, Automated Customer Experience. What does that mean? Yeah, it's PLG essentially, but it's not as scary because I don't have all these preconceived notions about it. So everyone who talks about ACE internally at Nylas, they're actually talking about PLG, and that was a great way to sort of reset expectations around it. So getting buy-in really took a few steps, and I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm going to just tell you what those steps really were. Number one is, you got to work with me, not me specifically, the product team. I highly recommend that, because it is much easier to reach someone's brain through their eyes than it is through their ears, right? Having something that you can show them that is beyond disbelief, more than just wireframes, that is something you can put at the center of the table, and everyone's talking about it, and you know everyone's speaking about the same thing. So we actually ended up going as far as creating extremely detailed mockups that ended up almost exactly being in production. We went very far with the teams to build these things, so that when we were talking to various departments about it, whether it's sales, whatever, everyone knew exactly how this was going to affect them, because that's what's important, and that's what's going to be the source of a lot of internal friction or fears around this. They don't really know how it will affect them. It's scary. And then, boom, look at that. Looks like it's live. This was actually one of the mock-ups, and the live does look pretty much like this. And then secondly, what we ended up having to do, next build please, is we actually built financial models around this. In fact, I built financial models around this. Do I seem like that kind of guy? I'm not. And ChatGPT wasn't really there yet. 4 wasn't out, so this was hard. But this is where you start to address those concerns around things like revenue recognition. Like, hey, we actually are going to take a hit in the buying cycle, right? Where people are going to have longer time to close. It's a one-time hit that we're going to eat through, all that stuff. But instead of trying to talk people out of it, we could actually quantify it with pretty conservative assumptions and show that in a really short amount of time, it paid for itself. Something that when everyone actually looked at it and first looked at the assumption is like, yep, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you. And then looked at the final numbers, the nice little curve that, of course, is exactly what reality ends up representing. They were happy. And those conversations just evaporated after that, right? People were bought in once the numbers showed it. And then next, one thing I would say to really focus on is make presentations about the current state of things. I make this joke all the time. You've all seen probably on social media, like someone changes a picture in their mom's house to like a picture of Nicolas Cage, and no one notices for like 6 months, right? I think we all have that, where the things you see every day you forget about. You forget that those some of them might not be right within your business. You haven't really addressed them. You haven't spoken about them. Really walk through the current state, and some of the shortfalls in what you're experiencing in your buying cycle will be very apparent. You won't even need to put your finger on them. They will present themselves, and people know when they're talking through things, they're like, this isn't right. This isn't right. And the more time we spent talking about the current state of things, the less time we had to spend talking about the solution, because everyone was organically coming to the same solution, which is that we need some sort of self-service flow and ability to grow with that, which we called ACE, not PLG. And then last but not least, multiple offsites. Do this in person, please. Hey, you got to fly, maybe buy a little carbon offset or something, right? But you got to do these in person where you know that someone's not going to be tuning out for the first half of the meeting and then they hear something that they glom onto and they haven't heard the context around it. The best way to do this is sit in a room, talk through everything for as long as it takes. Do interdepartmental offsites, do single departmental offsites where it's like just the marketing talking about how it will affect them. Of course, get leadership as well. And what's cool about this is that you don't have to be a decision maker to make this happen. You don't have to be the head of your department or anything like this. Just getting your department to talk about it, that's something that an individual can make a decision on and push for and will probably get. That's how you build this out. Talk in person. So this is what we started with, the hedge maze, as we referred to it as. And then we ended up with the hallway, right? Very easy to use. And this is just, if you focus on the value, everything else comes together, right? We were focused on what is the shortest time to understanding. We called it time to grok, which is an engineering word for understanding things very deeply. And what's so cool about this is we went from like a 30-day implementation time to like a 3-day, and in some case 3-hour implementation time for engineers. Order of magnitudes improvement in multiple regards. What's awesome about this is try and track the data on this first one, on the hedge maze, where people are falling off. We didn't really know what to optimize because you look at it as like a Sankey graph or something, and you just don't really know what your users are doing. With this, with the hallway instead of the hedge maze, very easy to track and build tooling around as well. Well, mostly easy. So you got to build a launch plan. And again, if you're in a place where you don't have buy-in for PLG yet, you still should think about these later parts of it, of building the launch plan, of rolling out all that, because it will help you actually get buy-in in the first place. So again, after you have buy-in, do more offsites, do Q&As, do roundtables, because everyone's going to drop the ball somewhere if they're not owning something, right? You need to make sure all of these departments own a roadmap. So billing needs to have a roadmap of what they're going to do and implement, right? And it shouldn't be you dictating it to them. It should be billing coming up with that roadmap themselves. And the rationale is they will go find the information they need because, hey, I mean, billing needs to know when they check the box for the terms of service and they have the audit, protection, email, all of that stuff that needs to be thought through. And having that siloed to like a product manager or something like that is not the move, right? So everyone here, if you are pushing that internally in your company, you are going to own a piece of it forever, period. Have an MVP more oriented approach. Don't try and do everything at once, right? Start small. Start with the smallest unit of PLG that you possibly can, because it'll be a lot easier to optimize. And you can't do everything well the first time. Stage your rollout. We actually had really, really, really conservative goals here, right? They were essentially sandbagged. I'll admit it. But what's great about that is if we were able to convince people that they wanted to do this with the most conservative goals that we could reasonably come up with, well, that means that we really believed in it, that they believed in it, that regardless of the actual short-term outcome, they were bought in. So there was very low risk of anyone saying, oh God, this isn't working, we need to reverse course, right? Everyone was bought in. And then thresholds, right? When it's time to roll up. So we actually started with a 10% rollout, very small. No way it's going to have any major impact on the pipeline, and titrate up from there. But we need to actually know what is going to drive us from 10 to 35 to 100%. Set those ahead of time, because it's very easy to kick the can down the road another month, and next thing you know, you're stuck. So our initial results were fantastic. I'm very happy to say. We achieved 1 month of forecasted results within 1 week, right? Again, we did sandbag those a little bit, but that meant that it just created this excitement in the company. No one needed to really like push this that hard. It was very low friction in order to be able to expand. We were well ahead of schedule on rolling out because of that as well. And we had a 4% conversion rate out of the gate, which is not world-class by any means, but it was enough that it actually really helped our pipeline quite a bit. And as the economic macro was starting to unfold, the recent one, in case you guys have heard about it, that actually made up for some softness, which was excellent. So we got lucky in that regard, and I'm happy about it. So measuring the motion, I love this term, coffee dashboard, right? You can have a ton of dashboards. Everyone has this where they're like, They have like 3,000 dashboards of their company and they don't trust any of them. You need your coffee dashboard, the one that you wake up in the morning having that first cup of coffee and you're like, ugh, and you're checking that dashboard. That is very important. And to be frank, that's hindsight. We didn't have that coming out of the gate and we learned that we needed it. You need to be hyper aggressive about testing. And I do specifically want to point out pricing. It is really easy because you'll be resetting some of your baselines. You'll be, making the data really hard to read sometimes. You need to test your pricing points as soon as you can. Even if you have a good conversion rate on them, make sure. Test higher, test lower, test nothing, test higher. Test the highest you can possibly think of, because I think you'll be very surprised. And the longer you go without testing them, the harder it will be to change them. Test pricing. All right. And then I actually recommend, if you're starting this within your company, don't make the key hires yet, right? Because it's very easy to go, okay, well, we need a growth engineering team and a growth manager or product growth manager, all of these things. Just do it, right? Do the Shia LaBeouf thing. Just do it. After launch, have those people come in when the engine is already constructed for them so that they can look at it with a very critical eye and tear it apart and fix the places where it's not so perfect. And we had that, and it's actually worked really well for us. Also, this is not a thing in the roadmap. This is not like, okay, like for the next 4 months, we're going to worry about this and then we're done. You just do this now. You address your PLG motion until the end of time. Once a week, once a month, whatever you set, you look at it very critically, and everyone at the company should be involved in this. I really don't see any department of the company that this doesn't have an effect on. So I think product-led growth is really easy from the product perspective to say, oh, that's has product in the name. It's the product team thing. It's a company strategy more than anything. The whole company's involved. So the takeaways, just to do a quick run through of everything. Focus on talking about the problem. Put the prep work in. Step outside of your domain in the way you like to think, make things, and show things. Show people what they want to see, what would help them come to the conclusion of doing it. Forecast very conservatively. Have these well-defined milestones ahead of time. Make sure everyone owns what they're doing. This should not be siloed to an individual or an individual department. Everyone has their own thing that they should be held accountable for, that they come up with. Very important. Don't try and do everything at once. And then again, this is just what you do now. Do not launch it and then go on to something else, right? This should be a portion of your bandwidth forever. And then also I do want to call out Mallory Lee. She joined Nylas about halfway after we jumped off the cliff and we're trying to build the airplane on the way down. I don't think we would have taken flight without her. So I'm very, very happy and grateful that she joined. She is a visionary and she is iconic. She's like Cher or Bono or Princess Diana. I don't know. But if you see her, flag her down and say hi. And one last thing. I don't know if they're still here, but the product-led onboarding book, that was absolutely instrumental for us. That was something that I sent to all of our product managers. A lot of people on the go-to-market side read it. This just made it really easy for those people that were key resources in this to get bought in, and everyone read it, which I'm really happy about. That's unusual when you sign a book. Most people don't read it, to be frank. Everyone read it and they would like hold it up and like read a passage from it, and it was the way to win arguments internally. I'm sorry, debates, arguments. And that's all I got. So thank you so much.